Welcome. My name is Kendra Morgan, and I'm the host of the Rise and Build podcast, where we hope to empower you to rise up and build a strong family, knowing you have to strengthen your hands to do the good work. Come with us as we rise and build. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Rise and Build podcast. Today is going to be a really great day. We are talking about divorce. First, I want you to know that we are all about marriage. So it seems kind of like we're talking about something negative because we're jumping into divorce. But I have two licensed professional counselors sitting across from me, Chris and Jen Giles, and they cover this topic often, and they talk about this topic often. And the reality is we have a lot of families that are going through a divorce. So if you are single, if you are married, if you are thinking about getting married, if you're going through a divorce, I think this podcast is a good one for you. So today we are going to jump in on the topic of divorce and how it affects families. And we've got lots of great questions. But before we get started on the questions, I really want you guys to learn who our guests are. And so Jen and Chris, will you tell us a little bit about you guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Hi, Kendra. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
I'm Chris Giles. It's my wife, Jen. Mm-hmm. We're with Christian Family Institute. We've been there about 13 years now. Mm-hmm. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been licensed for about 21 years now, so I've been doing it quite a while. And in our practice, we see a lot of people in different scenarios. So people who are married, people who are going through divorce, lots of life transitions, families going through lots of different just issues within the family. So we really enjoy working with families and individuals at Christian Family Institute. So
yeah. I could share a little bit about us if you'd like.
Do. No, I want to know.
Yeah, so I'm Jen Giles, and Chris and I actually met during my freshman welcome week in college. And we started dating that November of my freshman year. And next week, we will actually have been together for 29 years, and we've been married for 25 years. And we have two daughters. One is 20 and one is 17. So we've got one in college and one finishing up high school. And we really, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and Chris and I joined Christian Family Institute together at the same time, so almost 13 years ago. And we have a team of really awesome people that we get to work with. So it ends up being a wonderful place to work. We work with friends who are like family, and people that have different specialties and are able to address a host of different issues there. And so we feel really proud of the group that we get to serve the community with.
I think you should be proud. I know Building All Children refers to your program a lot because you do have great counselors that can help in lots of different ways in different areas. So I think you should be proud. We love you guys and love how you serve our families so well. So thank you for that. So let's dive into this topic. And Chris, I'm glad you said that you work with multiple families in different ways. I think that is important because we are kind of focusing on one topic, but that's not all that you see and all that you work with.
Absolutely.
I do know that you have worked with some of our families in the past that were going through a divorce, and some of the advice that you gave them was so wise and so great. And so when this topic came up, you were the first couple that I thought about because I just feel like we can kind of go through some of these questions and you're going to be able to provide some wisdom through this. So talk to us about divorce. We know that it seems like we're hearing the word more often. More people are thinking about it or talking about it or actually getting a divorce. Is that true? Can you kind of tell us the latest research with divorce?
Yeah, the numbers and the statistics are a little bit tricky.
Okay.
But we're still around 50%. We seem to be going down since the mid-2000s. We seem to be going down a little bit.
Okay.
So we're getting into the 45% range probably. But it is a little easier to just say 50%. It's important to know that that's 50% of first marriages end in divorce because when you start looking at second marriage, third marriage, and multiples, the percent of divorce rises significantly with each one.
Okay.
So second marriage, you're looking at roughly 75% divorce rate.
Okay.
And then on up from
and
there.
it can go up each marriage, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because
Well,
the difficulties just continue to rise.
that makes
So
sense.
it makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. In your opinion, can you talk to us about the meaning of marriage, the purpose of marriage? Kind of talk to us. Let's just talk about marriage before we get into divorce.
Yeah. One of the things that, and we know that Tim Keller talks about this. A lot of your listeners are probably familiar with Tim Keller. Late Tim Keller, who was a pastor for many, many years. He does a really good job explaining some of the meaning of marriage. One of the things that we know is that people who are married have better health. People who are married have better economic outcomes. Their children do better, and we'll talk some more about that later. That's really important. And it's important to know also that marriage has such a significant impact on kiddos. We know right now about 27 to 30% of children live in single-parent households.
Wow, okay.
And so that's going to have an impact on those kiddos.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think about the meaning of marriage, just from a biblical perspective, we see that the marriage relationship is really the manifestation of God's relationship with mankind. And it's an opportunity for couples who have chosen to live this committed life together to recognize that they're merging themselves. Like, each person was created with the imprint of the image of God, but that doesn't mean we were created perfectly.
Right.
We also have places where we do have deficits or things that we've experienced that make life hard. And we're trying to merge these lives and engage with each other in a way that honestly just requires a lot of self-sacrifice and putting the marriage above self. And in that way, it's truly something that God uses often for our sanctification to help us grow in the places that we are really lacking and to help us grow nearer to Him, because we do rely on Him so much in that relationship.
Yeah.
Something that I learned here recently in the last year or so from a gentleman named Marty Solomon. He's got a great podcast. He talks about how in the very beginning with Adam and Eve, there's in our English Bible, there's the word helpmate.
Yeah.
And he talks about how it's not a very good English translation of the original meaning. Helpmate would imply that there is a leader and then someone who comes along to help.
Yeah.
And he says that the original Hebrew basically implies to come against. And so when God says, I'm going to create someone for Adam, I'm going to create a helpmate suitable, it basically means I'm going to create someone to come against him, to create tension, to have conflict.
Yeah.
But it's not a negative, it's a positive. It's like two planks of wood standing against each other, holding each other up.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that tension causes growth, that tension causes strength.
Yeah.
And if we can get back to that original meaning, then I think it's just a much better view of what marriage can be.
Yeah. No, that's good.
That's so good.
It is so good.
Good job, babe.
Very good. And I think it's so important. So what are some of the problems that you're seeing in marriages? Why are people unhappy in their marriage?
Well, there's so many things we could go into,
Yeah.
and I've got a kind of a list here, and they're not in any particular order. But the one thing that we're really seeing over the last decade or decade and a half is this proliferation of distraction.
Okay.
We've got social media.
Yes.
We've got our cell phones. We've got computers that we can have in our pockets and on our laps at any point in time. We've got our kids in so many activities. There's so many opportunities for us to be busy. And then, of course, we've got things like pornography. There's just so many things that can distract us from one another. It is so easy to be distracted from being intentional in our marriage. So I would say that's the biggest thing here recently in the last decade or so that I'm seeing a lot of. Couples just not having time or making time for one another because it's so easy to be distracted.
Yeah, they're just so busy. They're so busy, and if you don't make your marriage a priority, it's just going to get lost in the busyness.
Right. And we use the word busy a lot differently than we used to. I grew up on a farm. When my dad was busy, he was actually going out and producing something.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Our busyness now is scrolling Facebook.
You're right.
Our busyness now is being distracted, almost an escapism. So that's really big right now, I think.
That's a great point. I'm glad that you said that for sure.
Yeah. I think there's a kind of, as our culture evolves, we have a pretty significant inability to handle discomfort. Whenever we're uncomfortable with something, maybe my spouse complains to me about something, or I have some complaint about her, we feel uncomfortable, and we're not really raising our kids to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so
kind of to tolerate that, to know how to handle the distress of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if marriage is meant to have tension in it so that we can grow, there's going to be discomfort. And I just think as a culture, we have a hard time being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's good. We talk about that all the time with children, that in a weird way, I feel like parenting has become making them feel safe all the time. And we don't live in a safe world, so we have to teach them how to deal with that. So I love that you mentioned that piece of it too, because marriage is hard. I don't know one person that can say, ugh, it's a piece of cake, right? I mean, I would say, I love my husband. We have a good marriage, but it's hard.
Exactly.
We have to work really hard at it. It's not, and it's an everyday thing that you have to work hard at.
Being willing to show up in those moments of discomfort and be sharpened through it.
It's impossible to find someone who is not going to have a problem with something you're doing.
Yes.
No one is going to believe you to be perfect. And if you're looking for someone to think you're perfect, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yes. Jen, do you have anything else to add on that?
Sure. So we were thinking like a third area that we see as a common problem that shows up in counseling is just a general lack of conflict resolution skills, which kind of goes along with point 2. And I've been guilty of this. I have to say this comes from my own experience, but I think we can tend to, as we get further along in marriage, we're looking for reasons to not be together more than we're looking for reasons to be together. And I wouldn't say that I've been tempted to not be with Chris, but it's the critical lens that we can start to view our spouses through. So when we're first getting together, we have the lenses on that have us see them in this really illuminated way, where we think they just hung the moon and they're so amazing. And then as time goes on and our differences wear on our relationship, maybe things aren't brought up, then we begin to start picking apart the characteristics of them that we don't enjoy. And we do have a choice in how we view our spouse from moment to moment. So I've had to practice over the years, no offense, I'm sure you have too, like catching myself and recognizing that I'm starting to get nitpicky about things that really don't matter. And all it takes is a shift in the lenses that I'm viewing my husband through. Like, there's so much to love and embrace and be grateful for in him. And it's my issue, not his, to try to change those things. So I think that people come in and they're worn down after so much time, and they just have this laundry list of complaints that they haven't lodged, and a lot of times they're feeling pretty done, or they've determined that their spouse is diagnosably something based on the things that they're frustrated with that they haven't dealt with. Yep. We see some of that.
There's quite a few couples who diagnose their spouse with Dr. Google.
Yes.
So it's kind of a dangerous idea.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we could probably all be diagnosed in a weird way, right?
Right.
Okay. Anything else with that piece of it?
No, I think it's important to understand that some kind of older survey kind of research would show that divorced couples, unhappily married couples, and happily married couples tend to share the same issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's all boils down to how well they do problem solving and negotiating.
Wow. Yeah, navigating those issues.
Right.
Okay, so that
it's
it actually kind of brings me into the next question of when couples come to you, what are they wanting? And does counseling really help a marriage?
Yeah.
Which I think I know the answer to this question.
I think you do too, but we're excited to talk about it too. So I would say that people come into counseling, marriage counseling in particular, for a lot of different reasons. And we see people in a lot of different states in their marriages when they come in. Sometimes people truly are coming as seeking like marriage enhancement tools, maybe even saying we want therapy to prevent our dissatisfaction or divorce. So we just want to make sure that we're in a healthy place. And those are really fun.
Yeah, that's sweet.
People who are wanting to be proactive about their marriages, so much fun. We often see couples who are coming in because they're dealing with a crisis, either a crisis that they're experiencing inside of their marriage or their family or outside, and they're trying to figure out how to go about handling it. And some of those difficulties could be just navigating the in-law relationship, expectations from each person's family of origin. It could be work stresses or dealing with financial stress. Maybe they've experienced a grief or a loss and need to find a way to move through that, join together rather than independently and separately. Affair recovery we do quite a lot of, and then even just helping couples communicate about big decisions that would impact their family, where maybe, it's kind of a heated topic, or someone feels especially, emotionally concerned about the outcome of the conversation, which makes it tough to talk about, and we can just mediate that with them. And there are people who come in and they just really recognize that they have specific deficits in communication, in conflict resolution, in intimacy, or they're realizing that they're not having much fun together anymore. And so in those kind of situations, they might come in and say, we know exactly what we need, and they want a targeted plan for addressing and improving those areas. And then finally, we see people who come in kind of as a last-ditch effort.
Yeah. What does that mean exactly?
I know,
right?
That's the hard step.
We sometimes say we see them on their way to divorce court.
Okay.
Right.
And so the next question you asked was, does counseling help?
Right.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Overall, in general.
Yes.
A lot of it depends on what is the motivation and what is the willingness to do the work on the part of the couple. I have had people who, it was their last-ditch effort, and I wasn't certain they were going to make it.
Yeah.
But we did the work, and they made it.
We saw results. I love that.
And
It's
flourished.
so much fun.
Not just making it, not just trudging through, but finding a way to flourish together.
Yeah.
That can happen.
Yeah.
And
it's great when it does.
That's an important distinction, because I myself, as a marriage counselor, my goal is never to help a couple survive. That's my first goal.
Right.
We can do that fairly quickly. My goal is to help a couple thrive.
I love that.
Survival is not our goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And going back to Tim Keller, just because you brought him up earlier, he also stated one time, or I read it somewhere, that 2/3 of unhappy marriages, if they stay together longer than 5 years, they end up reporting happiness. So it goes back to what you said earlier, Chris, about kind of you have to work through the struggles and the trials and keep working on it, and then you'll end up becoming happy,
Yeah. That's and that's kind of an old, it's not really a statistic because it wasn't really based on research. It was based on some anecdotal surveys. that 2/3 of marriages, if you just wait it out, will be happy. It's kind of like the time heals all wounds thing, which we all know isn't really accurate.
Right.
We don't want to knee jerk, every disappointment we have.
Right.
But if during that 5 years we make changes,
yes,
we change our outlook, we change our mindset, we
love
change
that.
our skill set, then yes, in 5 years we can do.
Yeah.
I think in a year we can make a whole. I tell a lot of my clients, in a year you're not going to recognize where your marriage is from right now
That's
if we
awesome.
do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And learn the problem solving skills and kind of all those things you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, for our listeners that are listening to this, could you guys give them 2 things that you would recommend that could strengthen a marriage?
Yeah, one of the first things I really try to get, especially if we can get through a crisis point, is let's have fun.
I love that.
Yeah. We have to have fun.
It's amazing how often fun is lacking in the people we see. And we'll ask them, what do you do for fun? What are your shared hobbies? And it's just deer in the headlights look. And they're like, oh, really quickly realizing that they're missing that.
Yeah.
They lost sight of it somewhere along the way.
A lot of people, I've heard people say we're just so opposite. We don't really have the same interests. That's almost never true. We are opposite, but if we do the work, we can find some ways that we can have fun together.
Yeah. And I think it's listening. I think that fun might change over time.
Oh, absolutely.
I know Ryan and I mean, we've been married 28 years, but he really is into hiking. Invited me a little getaway to Colorado. And so I ordered hiking boots because I was like, this man wants to hike. I don't really like to hike, but I'm going to figure out how to hike.
Yeah.
And we had so much fun hiking.
Yes.
But I knew that was something he loved to do. So sometimes it is giving up a little bit of self.
Yes.
And joining in their fun to just be together.
Yes,
Right?
it can be. Yeah, absolutely. We love to hike too.
You do?
But he's definitely more the hiker than me. I'm the tag along, but I have learned to I hope you keep hiking.
No, we do. I
Keep
mean, it was
exploring
fun because
fun
I really
places.
just followed him. Like he led it, he did it all, and I just kind of followed. But it was, I don't know, it was awesome.
It's so great.
Yeah.
For an example for us, like we started dating, Frisbee was the thing we would do. We would go to a park and throw Frisbee, have a little Subway picnic or whatever. And that's definitely changed over the years. There were years that the kids were little and Frisbee was difficult.
Yeah.
But we've gotten back to that a little bit recently and then definitely added some things that we enjoy as we mature. So
Yeah. So find ways to have fun.
Right.
Okay,
You
fun.
have to do it.
Number 1 was fun. I love that.
because we can put all the tools, all the communication and conflict resolution skills in your toolbox. But if you don't like each other, if you're not enjoying each other, it's going to be really hard to make those tools work.
It would be more like a businessy relationship.
More like a business
which
relationship.
Sometimes people choose that for their marriage, but we'd like more for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
else? So have fun. We got that one. What else is there?
Well, and then building those skills
Yeah.
to make complaints with one another, to influence. We can say it as complaints, but it's also influencing one another, right? It goes to that Ephesians 5.
Yes.
Submit one to another. The research literature would call that accepting influence from one another. Okay. It's not quite the biblical language, but it means the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna if I see something that I would like for Jen to change, I need to have the skill to go to her and say, I would like it if you could do this, or if we could do this together, right? Rather than you need to, or you should, or you ought to, or what's wrong with you that you're not doing this. There are skills that can be built to complain and influence one another that we really need to learn.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, it's receiving those kinds of influencing statements too, right? The ability to hear that and not get totally overwhelmed with some dysregulated emotion, but to be able to say, I want to sit with you and hear what it is that you're trying to communicate, why it matters to you, because once I know that, it matters to me too, right? And then maybe there's a way that we work at it together.
Yeah.
So it's a partnership and it doesn't feel like this him against me or me against him situation.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. So let's talk about needs. Chris, tell us, what does a man need in a marriage? Jen, you tell us about female. What does a woman need in a marriage? Talk to me about needs.
Yeah. So this is where we're going to step on some toes.
Okay, I
All
love
right.
this.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, even in our Christian community, we've got some of these books out there that are really popular.
Yeah.
His Needs, Her Needs, really popular, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s. You've got the old Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yes.
The problem with this idea is that one, they're way overgeneralized.
Okay.
Not all men need certain things. Not all women need certain things. But then there's also this really important distinction that we need to make. We all come into marriage or any relationship with desires and expectations, but we somehow translate those into needs. And if we're going to really get down to brass tacks, we only need a certain few things. We need oxygen. We need food.
Okay.
We need water. We need warmth.
Maybe safe shelter.
Maybe some safe shelter, right? Those are needs. Those are things
Okay.
we cannot live without. Most of the things in those books and most of the things that we think are needs, things like, let's just put it out there, things like sex, okay? Those aren't needs. Those are desires, and we all have different levels of desires in those things. But we can live without them.
Okay.
And we don't want to.
Right.
Because they're fun.
Yeah.
Because they're enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because they build connection. We don't want to live without them. But when we put the word need behind them, it gets dangerous, because if someone were to take something I need away from me, maybe food, security. If someone tried to take my oxygen away from me, I'm going to act in ways that I wouldn't normally act.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah. And so we see that in marriage. I think I need a certain thing and my spouse isn't giving it to me. And so now I begin to act in ways that I wouldn't normally act.
More like a survival mechanism, right? So it's
Right.
very self-focused, trying to make sure I have what I think I need.
Yeah.
And it becomes really abrasive.
Yeah. So I really caution against using the word need.
Yeah.
And,
No, I
and
think
even
it's
going
good.
to some of those resources that, again, I know they're very popular, but they do put they put us against one another. You're not meeting my needs, so I'm not going to meet your needs, and it makes it really hard to negotiate. But if we call them desires and expectations, we can go negotiate those things a little easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to kind of add to that, the desires and the expectations that each individual has in a marriage are going to be really unique, right? So they're not just a man's type of desires and expectations and a woman's type of desires and expectations. It's truly, that's going to be based on your own personality and your life experiences, and maybe the things that you didn't have access to as much when you were young. Those feel most important to you as a desire or expectation for your marriage, and most threatening if you don't have it within your marriage. And so to me, the more important task when we talk about the idea of needs is that we're talking about becoming really curious and interested in discovering what it is that our partner is desiring from marriage, what they feel might be lacking, what they want more of, what they want less of. And that requires a good level of safety in communication and the ability to be really honest without worrying that you're going to flare your partner up if you say something that they're not quite doing enough of. And then the ability to be able to articulate, I would love to see more of this in our marriage. This feels really important to me. And then we have kind of a roadmap for finding ways of honoring those desires in our marriages.
Yeah.
Awesome, Jen. Such great information. You guys have really helped us understand marriage, the meaning of it, divorce, what to do. But you guys know my heart, and it is always about children. So I want to dive into how divorce affects children. But that's going to have to be next episode. So next episode, we will dive into how divorce affects children and what we can do to protect those relationships.
Great.
So sounds great.
Let us close with a word of prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for these children in our lives. Thank you for all the resources you have placed in our life to help us rise up and build. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you for listening to the Rise and Build podcast, brought to you by Building All Children. a child development program in Tulsa, Oklahoma. To learn more about Building All Children or the Rise and Build podcast, please visit buildingallchildren.org. This podcast is crowdfunded. We appreciate our sponsors and the donations given by our listeners. Come with us as we rise and build.